I remember the day I first came to Ravenwood Academy. The school looked like an old castle with tall towers and dark windows, but what really caught my eye was the huge library. It was bigger than any building I'd ever seen before. My name is Lily Chen, and I was 12 years old when my parents left me at this fancy boarding school. I was scared, but also excited. This place was going to be my new home, and I couldn't wait to explore every part of it. As I walked up the steps with my suitcase, my heart was beating so fast. The big wooden doors creaked open, and I stepped inside. The entrance hall was dark and smelled like old books and cleaning stuff. A tall lady with gray hair and a tight bun came up to me. She had a nice smile, but her eyes looked serious. "Welcome to Ravenwood Academy, Lily," she said. "I'm Mrs. Thompson, the school secretary. Let's get you settled in." Mrs. Thompson showed me around, pointing out classrooms and telling me about the school rules. But I was only half listening. I kept thinking about that big library I'd seen from outside. I couldn't wait to check it out. The next day was when all the new kids got to tour the school. We all went into the library, and as soon as I walked in, I felt weird. The ceiling was so high I could barely see it, and there were bookshelves everywhere I looked. Our guide was talking about how old the library was, but I wasn't really listening. Something felt strange. I couldn't explain it, but it was like the air was heavy in there. And then I heard it. A soft whisper, like someone was talking right behind me. I turned around fast, but there was no one there, just rows and rows of books. I shook my head, thinking I must be hearing things. But then I heard it again, clearer this time. It sounded like someone was saying my name. "Lily, Lily." I looked at the other kids, but no one else seemed to notice anything weird. They were all listening to the guide, who was now showing us how to find books. I tried to pay attention, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching me. As we left the library, I looked back over my shoulder. For a second, I thought I saw a shadow move between the shelves, but when I blinked, it was gone. I hurried to catch up with the group, my heart pounding. What was going on in this library? That night, I met the girls I'd be sharing a room with. There was Emma Blackwood, a quiet girl with glasses who always had her nose in a book. And then there was Max Rodriguez, who couldn't stop talking about her new computer and all the games she'd brought. We were sitting on our beds talking about our first day when I decided to ask about the library. "Did you guys notice anything weird during the tour today?" I asked, trying to sound normal. Emma looked up from her book, her eyes wide. "Weird how?" I shrugged. "I don't know, like whispers or shadows moving?" Max laughed. "Come on, Lily. Don't tell me you believe in ghosts or something." "I don't," I said quickly. "It's just, never mind, it was probably nothing." But Emma was looking at me funny. "You heard whispers?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "Yeah. Did you hear them too?" Emma bit her lip and looked down at her book. "Maybe," she said, "but I thought I was just imagining things." Max looked between us, her smile fading. "Okay, you guys are starting to freak me out. It's just a library, right?" I wanted to believe her, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right about that place. And from the look on Emma's face, I think she knew it too. The next morning was our first real day of classes. I woke up early feeling nervous. What if the work was too hard? What if I didn't make any friends? And worst of all, what if I had to go back to that creepy library? I put on my new school uniform, a scratchy blue sweater and a plaid skirt, and went down to breakfast with Emma and Max. The dining hall was noisy, with kids laughing and talking. I tried to join in, but I kept thinking about the library. Our first class was English with Mrs. Parker. She seemed nice, but when she said we'd be spending a lot of time in the library for research, I felt my stomach drop. I looked at Emma, and she looked just as nervous as I felt. As Mrs. Parker talked about the books we'd be reading this year, I tried to listen, but it was like I could hear those whispers again, even though I was nowhere near the library. "Lily, Lily." They seemed to be calling me, pulling at me. I must have looked pretty out of it because Max poked me with her elbow. "You okay?" she whispered. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a smile. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just nervous about all this new stuff." But I wasn't fine. Not really, because I knew that sooner or later I'd have to go back to that library, and I had a feeling that whatever was in there was waiting for me. A few days went by, and I tried to tell myself that I'd imagined the whole thing in the library, but every time I walked past those big wooden doors, I got that same creepy feeling. One night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the whispers and the moving shadows. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know what was going on. I got out of bed, being careful not to wake Emma or Max. I put on my slippers and snuck out of our room. The hallways were dark and quiet, and every little noise made me jump. When I got to the library doors, I stopped. Was I really going to do this? But I had to know. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The library was different at night. Moonlight came through the high windows, making weird shadows on the floor. I walked between the shelves, my heart beating so loud I was sure someone would hear it. And then I saw it. A book floating in the air, moving from one shelf to another. I rubbed my eyes, sure I must be dreaming. But when I looked again, it was still there. I walked closer, my legs shaking. The book landed on a shelf, and then another one started to move. It was like the whole library was alive, the books dancing in the moonlight. I wanted to run, to scream, to wake up from this weird dream, but I couldn't move. I was frozen in place, watching as the library came to life around me, and then I heard the whisper again, louder this time. "Lily, we've been waiting for you." I don't know how long I stood there, watching the books move around me. It could have been a few minutes or a few hours, but suddenly, a bright light shone in my face, and I heard a stern voice say, "And what do you think you're doing out of bed, young lady?" I blinked, trying to see past the light. As my eyes got used to it, I saw it was Miss Poe, the librarian. She was a tall, thin woman with long gray hair, and right now she looked pretty angry. I stammered, trying to think of an excuse. But how could I explain what I'd seen? Would she even believe me? Miss Poe lowered her flashlight, and I saw her face soften a little. "Lily Chen, isn't it?" she asked. I nodded, still too scared to speak. "Come with me," she said, turning and walking towards her office. I followed her, my legs shaking. Was I in trouble? Would they kick me out of school? As we walked, I looked back at the shelves. The books were all perfectly still now, like nothing had ever happened. Miss Poe's office was small and messy, with books piled everywhere. She sat down behind her desk and looked at me for a long time. Then she said something I definitely wasn't expecting. "You saw them, didn't you? The books moving?" My mouth fell open. You know about that?" I asked. Miss Poe nodded slowly. "Oh yes, I know all about it, but Lily, you must understand, this is not something to play around with. The library, it has secrets, dangerous secrets." I felt a shiver run down my spine. "What kind of secrets?" I asked. Miss Poe leaned forward, her eyes intense. "Secrets that could change everything if the wrong people found out. Lily, I need you to promise me something. Promise me you won't come here alone again. It's not safe." I nodded quickly, ready to promise anything if it meant I could go back to bed and forget this whole weird night. But as Miss Poe walked me back to my room, I couldn't help but wonder, what other secrets was this school hiding? The next day, I couldn't focus on any of my classes. I kept thinking about what I'd seen in the library and what Miss Poe had said. Dangerous secrets? What did that even mean? During lunch, I pulled Max and Emma aside. "Guys, I need to tell you something," I said, and then told them everything. About the moving books, the whispers, and Miss Poe's weird warning. Max looked like she didn't believe me. "Come on, Lily. There's got to be a normal explanation. Maybe it was just a joke or something." But Emma was nodding slowly. "I believe you," she said quietly. "I felt it too, like the library is alive somehow." "So what do we do?" I asked. "Miss Poe told me to stay away, but I can't just ignore this." Max sighed. "I can't believe I'm saying this, but maybe we should do some research? See if there's any weird stuff that's happened here before?" And that's how we ended up spending our free time in the computer lab, looking for any information we could find about Ravenwood Academy and its library. At first, we didn't find much, just the usual stuff about how old the school was and how many famous people had studied here. But then Emma found something interesting. "Look at this," she said, pointing at her screen. "There's a whole part of the school's history that's just missing. Like there are no records at all for almost 50 years, back in the 1800s. "That's weird," I said, leaning in to look. "Why would there be no records?" Max shrugged. "Maybe there was a fire or something? Old records get lost all the time." But I had a feeling it was more than that. Something had happened during those missing years, something the school didn't want anyone to know about. As the bell rang, telling us it was time for our next class, I made a decision. "We need to go back to the library," I said. "Tonight, after everyone's asleep." Emma looked nervous, but she nodded. Max groaned. "I know I'm going to regret this," she said, "but I'm in." As we headed to our next class, I felt excited and scared at the same time. We were going to solve this mystery no matter what. That night, we waited until everyone in our dorm was asleep. Then, as quiet as we could, we snuck out of our room and made our way to the library. The halls were dark, and every little noise made us jump. When we finally got to the library doors, I stopped. "Maybe this isn't such a good idea," I whispered. But Max, who hadn't believed me at first, was now the one pushing us forward. "We've come this far," she said. "We might as well check it out." We went inside, using the flashlight on Max's phone to see. The library looked even creepier at night than it had before. Shadows seemed to move in the corners of my eyes, and I could have sworn I heard whispers coming from the shelves. "Let's split up," Max suggested. "We can cover more ground that way." I didn't like the idea of being alone in here, but I nodded. We agreed to meet back at the entrance in 15 minutes, no matter what we found. I walked deeper into the library, my heart pounding. The bookshelves were so tall I felt like they might fall over on me at any moment. And then I saw it. A shadow, darker than the others, moving between the shelves. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaking. "Is someone there?" The shadow stopped moving. For a moment, everything was perfectly still, and then it started coming towards me. I wanted to run, but I was frozen in place. The shadow got closer and closer, and I could hear that whisper again. "Lily! Lily!" Just as the shadow was about to reach me, I heard Emma scream from somewhere in the library. The shadow disappeared, and I ran towards the sound of Emma's voice. I found her and Max in the reference section. Emma was pale and shaking, and Max looked like she'd seen a ghost. "What happened?" I asked. Emma pointed with a shaking hand. "The books, they were flying all by themselves." Max nodded. "I saw it too. It wasn't a trick or anything, they were really flying." I told them about the shadow I'd seen, and we all agreed on one thing. We needed to get out of there fast. As we ran out of the library, I looked back one last time, and there, standing in the doorway, was a figure. It wasn't Miss Poe or any teacher I knew. It was tall and dark with glowing red eyes. I blinked and it was gone, but I knew what I'd seen. And I knew that whatever was going on in this library, it was a lot more dangerous than we'd thought. The next morning, none of us wanted to talk about what had happened in the library. It was like if we didn't say it out loud, maybe it wouldn't be real. But I could see it in Emma's eyes and the way Max kept looking over her shoulder. We were all scared. During breakfast, I couldn't eat. My stomach felt like it was tied in knots. I kept thinking about that shadow figure I'd seen, with its glowing red eyes. What was it? And what did it want with us? Our first class was history, and guess where we had to go for research? That's right, the library. As we walked there, I felt like my feet were made of lead. I didn't want to go back in there, not after what we'd seen, but we didn't have a choice. As we walked in, Miss Poe gave us a strange look. Did she know we'd been here last night? I tried to act normal as I grabbed a book off the shelf, but my hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold it. Emma sat down next to me, her face pale. "Lily," she whispered, "look at this." She pointed to a page in her book. It was about the history of Ravenwood Academy, but there was a whole section that had been blacked out, like someone had taken a marker and scribbled over it. "What do you think that's about?" I asked. Emma shook her head. "I don't know, but it's in the part about the library, and look at the date. It's from those missing years we found online." I felt a chill run down my spine. Whatever secret this library was hiding, someone had gone to a lot of trouble to keep it hidden. Just then, I heard that whisper again. "Lily, help us." I jumped up, knocking my chair over. Everyone turned to look at me, including Miss Poe. "Is everything all right, Lily?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. I nodded, trying to calm my racing heart. "Yeah, sorry, I just thought I heard something." As I sat back down, I caught Max's eye. She mouthed, "We need to talk," and I nodded. Whatever was going on here, we were in way over our heads. After class, Max, Emma, and I met in a quiet corner of the schoolyard. We sat under a big old tree where we could see if anyone came close enough to hear us. "Okay," Max said, looking around to make sure no one was listening. "We need a plan. We can't just keep sneaking into the library at night and hoping we don't get caught." Emma nodded. "Or worse," she added quietly. We all knew what she meant, caught by whatever that shadow thing was. I took a deep breath. "I think we need to find out more about those missing years," I said, "and about why parts of the book were blacked out. There's got to be a connection." "But how?" Max asked. "It's not like the school is just going to tell us their secrets." We all sat there for a minute, thinking. Then Emma's eyes lit up. "What about the town library?" she said. "Maybe they have old newspapers or something from back then, something the school couldn't black out." It was a good idea. The town wasn't far from the school, and we were allowed to go there on weekends if we got permission. "That could work," I said. "But we should also keep looking in the school library. There might be more clues there." Max looked nervous. "I don't know, guys, after what we saw." I reached out and squeezed her hand. "I know it's scary," I said, "but don't you want to know what's going on? Why the library is the way it is?" Max sighed but nodded. "Yeah, I do. Okay, I'm in, but we need to be careful." We spent the next hour making our plan. We'd take turns in the library, always in pairs so no one was ever alone. We'd look for more blacked-out sections in books and for anything about the school's history. On the weekend, we'd go to the town library and see what we could find there. And most importantly, we'd keep everything we found secret. We couldn't risk anyone finding out what we were doing. As we walked back to our dorm, I felt a mix of excitement and fear. We were really doing this. We were going to uncover the secrets of the Whispering Library. But as we passed by the library building, I could have sworn I heard that whisper again. "Hurry, Lily, time is running out." I shivered and walked faster. Whatever was in that library, it was waiting for us. And I had a feeling that our investigation was about to get a lot more dangerous. The next few days were a blur of classes, homework, and secret research. We took turns sneaking into the library during our free periods, always keeping an eye out for Miss Poe or that creepy shadow. It was on the third day that we found something. I was reaching for a book on a high shelf when my hand brushed against something that felt different. It wasn't the smooth wood of the shelf or the rough cover of a book. It felt like metal. I called Max over quietly. "Feel this," I whispered, guiding her hand to the spot. Her eyes widened. "It's a lever," she said. "Should we pull it?" I looked around. The library was almost empty and Miss Poe was nowhere in sight. "Let's do it," I said. We both grabbed the lever and pulled. For a second, nothing happened. Then we heard a low rumbling sound and the bookshelf started to move. It swung open like a door, revealing a dark passageway behind it. Max and I looked at each other, our eyes wide with excitement and fear. "Should we go in?" Max whispered. I hesitated. It looked dark and scary in there. But then I heard that whisper again, clearer than ever. "This way, Lily. Find the truth." I took a deep breath. "Yeah," I said. "We should go in, but let's get Emma first." We quickly found Emma and brought her back to the hidden door. Her face went pale when she saw it, but she nodded bravely. "Let's do this," she said. We turned on the flashlights on our phones and stepped into the darkness. The passageway was narrow and dusty, like no one had been there in years. Cobwebs brushed against our faces as we walked. After what felt like forever, the passage opened up into a room. It was small, with no windows, and filled with old books and strange objects. In the center was a big wooden table, and on it was a book that seemed to glow in the dim light. "What is this place?" Emma whispered, her voice full of awe. I walked over to the table, drawn to the glowing book. As I got closer, I could see that it was very old, with a leather cover that had strange symbols on it. "Guys," I said, my voice shaking a little, "I think we just found the library's biggest secret." As I reached out to touch the book, the whispers started again. But this time they weren't just in my head. Max and Emma jumped, looking around wildly. "You hear it too?" I asked. They nodded, their eyes wide with fear. The whispers grew louder, swirling around us like a wind. And then suddenly they formed words we could all understand. "The truth lies within, brave ones. But beware, knowledge comes at a price. Are you willing to pay it?" We all looked at each other, fear and excitement in our eyes. We had found something big, something secret. But as I looked at that glowing book, I couldn't help but wonder, what price would we have to pay for the truth? With shaking hands, I reached out and opened the glowing book. As soon as I touched it, I felt a strange tingling in my fingers, like little electric shocks. The pages were yellow and crumbly, and the writing was in a language I didn't understand. But as I looked at it, the letters seemed to shift and change, becoming words I could read. "Guys," I whispered, "look at this." Max and Emma crowded around me, peering at the book. Their eyes widened as they saw the words changing too. "What does it say?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I started to read out loud. "In the year 1842, we, the founders of Ravenwood Academy, made a discovery that would change everything. This library, our pride and joy, sits upon a crossing of magical ley lines, rivers of power that run through the earth." I paused, my mind racing. Magical ley lines? Was this for real? Max nudged me. "Keep going," she said. I took a deep breath and continued. "We learned to tap into this power, to use it for knowledge and growth. But with great power comes great danger. The library became a living thing, filled with spirits and secrets. We became its guardians, sworn to protect its power from those who would misuse it." The room seemed to get colder as I read those words. I could feel goosebumps on my arms. "But there are those who seek this power for evil. They hunt for the Codex Umbra, the Book of Shadows, which holds the key to controlling the library's magic. We have hidden it well, but we fear it may not be enough. If you are reading this, young ones, know that you have been chosen. The library has called to you, as it once called to us. You must become the new guardians, protectors of knowledge and magic. But beware, the path ahead is dangerous. Dark forces are rising, and they will stop at nothing to claim the library's power. You must be brave, be wise, and above all, be united. The fate of Ravenwood, and perhaps the world, rests in your hands." As I finished reading, the book slammed shut on its own. We all jumped back, staring at it in shock. "This can't be real," Max said, shaking her head. "Magic? Ley lines? It's got to be some kind of joke." But Emma was nodding slowly. "It explains everything," she said. "The whispers, the moving books, the shadows. It's all real." I looked at the book, then at my friends. "So what do we do now?" I asked. Before anyone could answer, we heard footsteps coming down the passageway. We all froze in terror. "Quick," I whispered. "Hide!" We ducked behind some old bookshelves just as the door opened. Peeking through the dusty books, I saw a familiar figure enter the room. It was Miss Poe, and from the look on her face, she knew exactly what we'd discovered. "Children," she called out, her voice echoing in the small room. "I know you're in here. It's time we had a talk about the true nature of Ravenwood Academy." My heart was pounding so hard I was sure Miss Poe could hear it. Max, Emma, and I were crouched behind the bookshelves, hardly daring to breathe. What would happen if she found us? Would we be expelled, or worse? "Please come out," Miss Poe said, her voice softer now. "I'm not here to punish you. It's time you knew the truth." I looked at Max and Emma. They both nodded slowly. Taking a deep breath, I stood up. "We're here, Miss Poe," I said, my voice shaking a little. As Max and Emma stood up too, I saw something change in Miss Poe's eyes. She looked relieved. "Ah, Lily, Max, and Emma," she said. "I should have known it would be you three. The library chose well." "What do you mean the library chose us?" Max asked, still looking scared but also curious. Miss Poe walked over to the big table and put her hand on the glowing book. "This library is more than just a building full of books," she said. "It's alive in a way, and it chooses its guardians." "Like in the book," Emma said. "It said we were chosen." Miss Poe nodded. "Yes, just like in the book, which I assume you've read?" We all nodded. "Then you know about the ley lines and the magic," Miss Poe continued. "What you don't know is how dangerous this knowledge can be. There are people, bad people, who would do anything to control the library's power." A chill ran down my spine. "Is that why parts of the history books are blacked out?" I asked. "To hide the truth?" "Yes," Miss Poe said. "We've tried to keep the secret for generations, but now things are changing. The library is waking up, calling new guardians. That's you." "But we're just kids," Max protested. "How are we supposed to be guardians?" Miss Poe smiled, but it was a sad smile. "The library doesn't choose based on age," she said. "It chooses based on heart, on courage, on the ability to see beyond what's right in front of you. You three have all of that." I felt a mix of pride and fear. It was cool to be chosen, but also scary. "So what do we do now?" I asked. "Now," Miss Poe said, "you learn. I'll teach you about the library, about magic, about how to protect yourselves and others. But you must promise me something." We all nodded, waiting. "Promise me you'll take this seriously," Miss Poe said, her voice stern. "This isn't a game or an adventure story. People have died protecting this secret. It's dangerous and it's real." I swallowed hard. People had died? This was way bigger than I'd thought. But as I looked at Max and Emma, I knew we were in this together. "We promise," I said, and my friends nodded in agreement. Miss Poe looked relieved. "Good," she said. "Then let's begin your first lesson. But not here. It's not safe to stay in this room too long. The magic here is unstable." As if to prove her point, the shadows in the corners of the room seemed to move, reaching out towards us. I shivered. "Come," Miss Poe said, leading us towards the exit. "We have much to discuss and not much time. The darkness is growing stronger and we must be ready." As we followed her out of the secret room, I couldn't help but feel like everything had changed. This morning I was just a normal kid at a weird boarding school. Now I was a guardian of a magical library with an evil force coming after us. I looked at Max and Emma, saw the same mix of excitement and fear in their eyes that I felt. Whatever was coming, at least we'd face it together. But as we walked back into the main part of the library, I heard that whisper one more time. "Hurry, Lily. The shadows are rising." I walked a little faster, staying close to my friends. Our adventure was just beginning, and I had a feeling it was going to be more dangerous than we could ever imagine. Miss Poe led us to her office, a small room tucked away in a corner of the library. It looked normal enough, desk, chairs, lots of books, but now I noticed things I hadn't seen before. Strange symbols carved into the doorframe, crystals on the windowsill that seemed to glow faintly, a mirror on the wall that didn't quite reflect right. "Sit down," Miss Poe said, gesturing to the chairs in front of her desk. As we sat, she waved her hand and the door closed by itself. Max gasped. "How did you do that?" she asked, her eyes wide. Miss Poe smiled. "Magic, of course, and soon you'll be able to do it too. But first we need to talk about what you've learned and what comes next." She sat down behind her desk and looked at each of us in turn. "Tell me what you read in the book," she said. We took turns explaining what we'd seen, the story of the school's founders, the ley lines, the living library. As we talked, Miss Poe nodded, sometimes asking questions or clarifying points. When we finished, she sighed. "You've learned more in one day than most students learn in their entire time here," she said. "But there's so much more to know." "Like what?" Emma asked eagerly. She looked excited, like she couldn't wait to learn more. "Like the fact that magic isn't just in fairy tales," Miss Poe said. "It's real, and it's all around us. The library is a focal point, a place where magic is stronger, but it exists everywhere." She stood up and walked to a bookshelf, pulling out an old leather-bound book. "This is a beginner's guide to magic," she said, handing it to me. I want you all to read it, but be careful. Don't try any spells without me there to supervise." I took the book, feeling its weight in my hands. It tingled, like the book in the hidden room had. "But why us?" Max asked. She still looked scared. "Why not tell everyone?" Miss Poe's face got serious. "Because not everyone can handle this knowledge," she said, "and some people would use it for terrible things. Imagine if someone evil had the power to control minds, or to hurt people with just a thought. That's why we keep it secret." I shivered thinking about that. "So what do we do?" I asked. "You learn," Miss Poe said simply. "You train, you prepare, because something is coming, something dark. And when it arrives, we'll need every guardian we can get." She looked at each of us again, her eyes intense. "This won't be easy," she said. "You'll have to balance your normal schoolwork with magical training. You'll have to keep secrets from your friends and family, and you'll be in danger." I swallowed hard. It sounded scary, but also exciting. I looked at Max and Emma. They looked nervous too, but I could see the determination in their eyes. "We're in," I said, and they nodded in agreement. Miss Poe smiled, looking proud. "Good," she said. "Then let's begin with your first lesson. Close your eyes and listen to the library. Really listen. Tell me what you hear." We all closed our eyes. At first, I didn't hear anything but the normal sounds of the library, distant whispers of students, the hum of the air conditioning. But then, slowly, I started to hear something else, a kind of singing? No, not singing exactly, more like the sound of words, millions of words, all whispering together. "I hear stories," I said slowly, my eyes still closed, like all the books are talking at once. "Me too," Emma whispered. And I think I can understand some of it." "It's like the library is alive," Max added, her voice full of wonder. "Excellent," Miss Poe said softly. "You're beginning to hear the true voice of the library. This is the first step in becoming a guardian." I opened my eyes, blinking in the sudden light. The office looked different somehow, like it was glowing faintly. "That's enough for today," Miss Poe said. "Read the book I gave you, but remember, no trying spells on your own. We'll meet again tomorrow after classes." As we left her office, my head was spinning. Magic was real. We were going to learn to use it. But we were also in danger from some dark force we didn't understand. I clutched the magic book to my chest, both excited and terrified about what was to come. Our lives had changed forever, and I had a feeling this was just the beginning of our adventures at Ravenwood Academy.